TV, Ottawa.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, January 26th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now under an extreme cold warning and feeling in the minus 30s. It's minus 27 in Ottawa, minus 26 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ottawa City Council has its first meeting of the calendar year this morning. On the agenda, an attempt by Councillor Jeff Leeper to make cycling safer. Also a motion to help pay the legal bill to fight Quebec's Bill 21 in the Supreme Court. With more, here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
The motion is being put forward by Councillors Diane Deans and Ralston King and calls for up to $100,000 to go towards the legal challenge of the Quebec law preventing people in positions of authority who work for the province from wearing religious symbols. Deans feels people should not have to choose between their profession or their identity and religion. The Gloucester Southgate councillor tells City News what spurred on the call to the city.
The city of Brampton has called on other municipalities to offer up to $100,000 in funding to fund a legal challenge on this. So I'm going to be sponsoring that motion.
In February 2020, Council approved a motion officially opposing Bill 21 while supporting in principle the constitutional challenge of the law. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 9:01, and now the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Plenty of sunshine for us today, but it is cold. Just a light wind, but it feels a lot colder than the temperature indicates. The high today just minus 19. The average high is minus 6. Tonight, mainly clear, minus 27. And tomorrow, some light snow at times, not as cold. The high near minus 7. Could collect a couple of centimeters of snow by Thursday night. For today, the high, minus 19.
And right now, minus 27 in Ottawa, minus 26 in Smiths Falls. Some economists think the Bank of Canada will be raising the key interest rate this morning. That would send mortgage and other loan rates higher. It has been at 0.25% through much of this pandemic. And a new poll out suggests more Canadians are feeling confident about the state of the country's economy and also their own finances, although percentages aren't back to pre-pandemic levels just yet. Nearly 2/5 of respondents to a Leger poll rated the economy as being good or very good right now. That is up from last February. Canada's transport minister says there is no measurable impact on the number of trucks crossing the border since the government's COVID vaccine mandate went into effect on the 15th of this month. His comments come as a large convoy of truckers heads to Parliament Hill for a weekend freedom rally.
Omar Al-Gabra says Canadians have no reason to fear food shortages will result from a small minority of truck drivers refusing to comply with the mandate. He says despite some labor shortages and pandemic-related supply chain bottlenecks, the large grocery store chains and other retailers have assured him they have plenty of goods to provide their customers. He's calling out critics, including some Conservative MPs, for exaggerating supply chain problems and spreading fear of food insecurity. Karen Rebo, The Canadian Press.
City News time at 9:03. Russia is warning it will quickly take retaliatory measures if the states and allies reject its security demands and continue what Moscow calls their aggressive policies. Reporter Ian Pennell says statements have ratcheted up pressure on the West while there are concerns Moscow is still planning on a Ukraine invasion.
No sign of an easing to this crisis. Talks are underway in Paris, but no signs of any imminent diplomatic breakthrough. Meanwhile, more American military support arriving here in Ukraine as Russia bolsters its forces too.
Although Russia has repeatedly denied plans to invade Ukraine, NATO leaders are worried because Russia has massed troops at Ukraine's border. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
it's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
I have some good news. Could you use some good news? The sun will set at 1700 hours. 5 p.m. The sun will not set until 5 p.m. I almost want to do a happy dance. I saw that this morning. 5 p.m. sunsets. Take your victories where you can get them, my friends. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Oh, my goodness, what a program we have for you today. I haven't stopped since I got to the radio station. We are so busy this morning. Busy day of news. We're busy on a few fronts this morning. We have politics. We have the economy. We have City Hall, all wrapped up in one jam-packed Rob Snow Show. So on the politics front, on the political front, big day. Bank of Canada Day. Interest rate announcement. In less than an hour from now. The Bank of Canada will pronounce on monetary policy. I wonder if the Prime Minister will be paying attention. Most economists are expecting the Bank of Canada is going to raise interest rates this morning by 25 basis points in what could be the first of a series of interest rate hikes. Maybe 4, maybe 6. Just a little bit. Each and every time. 25 basis points at a time. So look, if that happens, that's big news. It's not unanimous among the economists. Some economists don't think the Bank of Canada is going to raise interest rates today, pull the trigger today. A minority, think the bank's going to wait a little longer. We'll want to see the full effect of the Omicron lockdown measures. But those inflation readings are hard to ignore, and so is the talk from the central bank governor, Tiff Macklem, who has vowed to rein in inflation, beat it back down to 2%. The last reading was 4.8%, strongest number in 30 years. So look, we're all over that story today. And when you think of inflation and monetary policy and the politics of it all, hey, who comes to mind? I suspect for many of you, who comes to mind, that's Pierre Poilievre, right? He's the finance critic, Conservative Party of Canada, local MP, member from Carleton. He's been very critical of the bank's monetary policy, very critical of Trudeau, of course. He's an opposition politician. Some say he's been inappropriate in his comments directed at the Bank of Canada. But I had the chance to speak with him this morning, about an hour ago or so. That interview is going to air in about 5 minutes from now. We also had the chance to talk about the convoy, the Freedom Convoy that's coming to Ottawa, and some of the tweets that Mr. Poilievre has sent out lately. Had quite a conversation about that. And look, leadership. There are lots of questions right now about Aaron O'Toole's leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. A lot of people are thinking he's not long for the job. That Aaron O'Toole is a lame duck leader. It's all he can do to dodge the knives. And that he's not going to be around much longer. He's not going to be the leader of the Conservative Party going into the next election. Look, none of this is top secret, okay? None of this is top secret. It's all over the news. And a name that keeps coming up is the name Pierre Poilievre as the next leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. My goodness, even Garry Mason wrote a few kind words about Pierre Poilievre in the Globe and Mail this week. So we're going to get into that and score our political fix well beyond that, because that's what political junkies do. We have a pair of great strategists on the air this morning, Cam Holmstrom from Bluesky and Garry Keller from Strategy Corp. Cam is a New Democrat. Garry is most certainly not a New Democrat. He's more on the right side of things. Hey, the politics of freedom convoys. If you're a politician, what are you supposed to say? Leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. And we'll probably talk about a few more things along the way. That's between 9:30 and 10. After the 11 o'clock news, we're going up the line with our Ottawa Valley correspondent, Bruce McIntyre, with the Eganville Leader. Also on interest rates and on inflation. A pair of great guests for you. You know, if the bank moves today, What does that mean if you need a mortgage? You're shopping for a mortgage. Your mortgage is up for renewal. Frank Napolitano, Mortgage Brokers Ottawa, back with us this morning. He'll offer as well the latest buzz on the housing market. Any signs of a slowdown? It's cold outside. Does that do anything to cool the housing market at all, Frank? Or is it still just, when it comes to Ottawa home prices, is it just, up, and away? And Philip Cross from the Macdonald-Laurier Institute, he is always such a great guest. He's ex-top statistician at Statistics Canada. And we're going to talk about inflation. We're going to talk about the Consumer Price Index. What is it? What is the CPI? What's in the CPI? Is the CPI a true measure of the cost of living? Is the cost of living really going up by 4.8%? Is our prices only going up by 4.8%, consumer prices? He does not think so because of what's in the CPI. How we measure inflation. So we'll talk about that. That's a nice wonky thing, so that's right up my alley. And the first city council meeting, 2022, gets underway this morning, 10 o'clock. You can catch that on Rogers Television this morning. They'll lead the Rob Snow Show. Bye. And they go right to the mayor's address, the State of the City address. And so we'll have the play-by-play of that instant analysis from our City Hall insider for the Rob Snow Show, Pat Aguccione, good friend of mine from the Ottawa Community Voice newspapers, and the Talkback Hour. Yes, between 10 and 11 o'clock, 750-1310, an hour of opinions and phone calls. Hottest hour of talk radio in town. This morning, the theme is getting back to normal. What does that mean for you? I hear it so often. I just want my old life back. I just want to go back to normal. Well, what does normal look like? Okay? After all of this is said and done, what does work look like? What does commuting look like? What does taking public transit look like? I think there are some things that shouldn't go back to normal. I don't want to go back to the normal same old healthcare system or long-term care system or social safety net. What's back to normal really going to mean for you on the Rob Snow Show? This is City News.
world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
You know my next guest as the inflation hawk of the Conservative Party of Canada. He is the Member of Parliament for the riding of Carleton. He is the finance critic for the Conservatives, and the official opposition, Pierre, joins me this morning on the Rob Snow Show. Good morning.
Good to be with you.
So look, given that we're speaking before the Bank of Canada's announcement on its key overnight interest rate, we only have so much material to work with. But whether the central bank holds the line for now or raises interest rates by 25 basis points, most of the experts that I talk to do expect the Bank of Canada to eventually announce a series of interest rate hikes this year, maybe 4, maybe as many as 6. My point is, if it doesn't happen today, it's only a matter of time. First of all, you have accused in the past the Bank of Canada of being too loose with monetary policy. What will be your reaction when interest rates start to rise?
Well, my reaction will be that this will be the second painful consequence of the disastrous policy of both the Trudeau government and its central bank. So if you think of a balloon, the Trudeau government has inflated our economic balloon with $500 billion of inflationary spending, a third of which Trudeau's own budget officer said had nothing to do with COVID. And now that balloon is so inflated, price of houses, the stock market, consumer goods, all inflated. Tiff Macklem, the governor of the bank, says, boy, we've got to do something about that. Why don't I take out a pin and pop that balloon? Well, that, of course, will bring even more pain. The answer, of course, would have been never to pump all of that newly created cash into the balloon in the first place, but to spend real money, and then we wouldn't be in the disaster that we're in. Let me do some of the math for your listeners. We've got a $1.2 trillion national debt now. So every 1 percentage point increase in interest rates means $12 billion of costs for the federal government and its taxpayers. The typical Canadian house, according to the Real Estate Association, now costs $811,000. So if you've got a $700,000 mortgage to buy that house, a 1 percentage point increase will cost you $7,000 every year in extra interest payments if you're one of half of the Canadians who have variable mortgages from last year's purchases. So the cost of these interest rates hikes now are going to be immense because the easy money policies of a year ago inflated our entire economy with massive debt and higher costs.
Okay, you have, how should I put this? You have questioned in the past the separation that has traditionally existed between the Bank of Canada and you, the politicians. The general view has always been that politicians shouldn't be directing monetary policy. That is the job of central bankers, not politicians, because we don't want our monetary policy to be political. So with that being said, there's a new mandate now from the Bank of Canada, the monetary policy framework that has to be renewed every 5 years by the government of Canada. And it just was. And under the new mandate, the Bank of Canada says that its cornerstone remains an inflation target of 2% inside a control range of 1 to 3%, but as well, quote, monetary policy should continue to support maximum sustainable employment, recognizing that maximum sustainable employment is not directly measurable and is determined largely by non-monetary factors that can change through time. But this is now called a dual mandate. The Bank of Canada now is a dual mandate, inflation and maximum sustainable employment. What, if any, issues do you have with that?
Obvious one is that inflation doesn't create jobs. Inflation actually kills jobs. We saw that when Pierre Elliott Trudeau, the old man, directed his central bank to print cash in the 1970s in order to pay for out-of-control spending. Inflation hit 12%. And what happened to unemployment? It rose to 12% as well. Why does inflation kill jobs? Because it messes up the price signal that employers rely on in order to do commerce. If you're in a business where you sign a 5-year contract, you can't figure out how to price the fourth or fifth year of that contract if you don't know what the value of your money is going to be 2 or 3 years down the road. And so economic relations between buyers and sellers break down, and so does the economy, and that kills jobs in addition to driving up consumer prices. The entire assumption in this new agreement is that if you increase inflation, you're going to create jobs by doing it. That has not been the case throughout history. And so I think all they've done is muddied the Bank of Canada's mandate. And in fact, the Liberals and Mr. Macklem used job creation as the excuse for all of the money printing they kept doing a year ago, even while inflation was above target, claiming that it was going to increase jobs and wages. It did not do that. All it did is increase inflation. The Bank of Canada should have one principal job, and that is to keep inflation low and stable.
Okay, but it says it still wants to keep inflation low and stable, that the cornerstone remains an inflation target of 2%. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with that inflation target. Okay. The problem is that they're watering it down with this convoluted wording. I'm sure your listeners, when they were listening to you read it, noticed how badly written it is. It's
not directly measurable, determined largely by non-monetary factors that can change through time.
Yeah, that gets you an F in grade 8 English because it's so vague and indiscernible. And when you have a vague mandate, you have no mandate. We should give the bank a simple job: protect the purchasing power of our money. That's it. We leave fiscal policy to our elected politicians because they're the ones who are accountable at the ballot box.
Okay. I must ask you, you've always been direct with me, so I must ask you about some items that are in the news today. There is this freedom convoy headed to our city. Could be one of the largest protests we've ever seen in the nation's capital. More than $5 million raised by the organizers. There's some question, as you know, about the GoFundMe and if it will release the funds. But nevertheless, we see videos of supporters lining the route all across the country. There are also worries that some of the protesters, quite frankly, might be coming here to cause trouble. You'll grant me that. That could happen. There's a media report this morning that a number of these protesters want to create trouble. Along the lines of what we saw January 6th, Washington. So with that long preamble, 3 days ago you tweeted, quote, "COVID has become a never-ending excuse for power-hungry authorities to replace our freedom with their control. Enough. Reopen our businesses, let our truckers drive, and restore freedom for all." Your caucus colleague and former leader of the Conservative Party, Mr. Scheer, tweeted this: "Thank you, truckers. Trudeau is attacking personal liberty and is threatening everyone's ability to get groceries because of his overreach on vaccine mandates. He," meaning Trudeau, "is the biggest threat to freedom in Canada." And then you retweeted, quote, "Andrew is right." Mr. Poilievre, these are tense times. So many people are on edge after 2 years of a pandemic. How appropriate are comments like these from a political leader like yourself? Shouldn't political leaders be trying to lower the temperature right now and not inflame divisions? Your comment, please.
Well, I don't agree with your characterization. Mr. Trudeau has taken political, and by his deputy prime minister's own pronouncement, they have taken political advantage of COVID. She said that COVID is a, quote, political opportunity. He tried to use COVID to give himself unprecedented powers to raise any tax to any level for any reason for 2 years without parliamentary approval. He tried to slip through a bill censoring what people can see and say online right in the middle of the crisis. We now know that his public health agency tracked 33 million cell phones, and they want to continue tracking our movements. And this is according to published media reports, by the way, that the agency doesn't even deny. Continue to track Canadian cell phone use and movements for the next 5 years. And now Mr. Trudeau has decided to generate political advantage for himself by targeting a group of people who work all by themselves in the cabin of a truck delivering our food. He has topped it, speaking of incendiary remarks, he's topped all that off by deliberately insulting people about whom he knows nothing as racist and misogynist simply because of their vaccine status. So has Mr. Trudeau used COVID to extend his authority, take political advantage, and unnecessarily reduce our freedom? Absolutely. And it is the job of the official opposition, when that happens, to say so. And frankly, I think this notion that criticizing the head of government is a dangerous thing to do is not the way democracy works. In a democracy, we are allowed to criticize our leaders.
Yeah, yes,
and we don't portray their critics as being dangerous for doing so.
Okay. When you say, I'm curious about this. When you say reopen our businesses, what do you mean? What do you mean? No restrictions? No restrictions at all? Just what do you mean? Reopen our businesses. What do you mean? Just tell me what you mean.
I mean, reopen our businesses. What more is there to be said than that? We need to get our businesses open and up and running. We should have the hospital capacity now to deal with COVID. This has been a 2-year-long saga. In the early COVID period, we all understood that the healthcare system wasn't suited to deal with surges in ICU overflow, but because it was new. But we're 2 years into this now, and $500 billion later, and we're still told that all of that money that was spent, none of it seemed to go to expanding healthcare so that we could deal with the problems that COVID would bring down the road. So instead, we're annihilating our small businesses again. And Rob, you should be on the phone with me when I get the calls from constituents who are hanging on by a thread, who have poured their entire lives into a single business, and now the business is worth next to nothing, and they're on the verge of shutting down. It is a failure of government that the best they can come up with after 2 years of this is just to shut everything down. And it's very easy, by the way, if I can be blunt, for the political class, the consultants, the lobbyists, the journalists, the others who have continued to get paid and continued to work, continued to, in many cases, just simply work from home, to simply say that these small businesses and the workers that they employ should just suck it up. And that has been the tone we have got from our Prime Minister, and that is one of the reasons why this debate has become so unfortunately divided.
Okay, one more thing. I want to read you a little thing from of all places, the Globe and Mail, a column in the Globe and Mail, Garry Mason, who usually doesn't have much that's good to say about any Conservative. Quote, Conservative MP Pierre Poilievre is the one to watch. The party's finance critic seems to be driving his own high-profile agenda. Say what you will about his take on various issues. At least he delivers them with conviction and authenticity, something sorely lacking in Mr. O'Toole. Does Aaron O'Toole still enjoy your support?
Yes.
What do you say to people who wonder if you're plotting a leadership run of your own? Do you want to be the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada?
No, I'm here serving as the finance critic. Aaron O'Toole is the legitimate leader. He was elected, and based on all the rules we have, he has the right to continue to do his job. And so I have shown my loyalty to him, collaborated with him on the major issues of the day, mostly finance, because that's the role he gave me, and I will keep doing that. I have always been loyal to whomever is in his place as our legitimate leader, and that is Aaron O'Toole.
Pierre Poilievre, thanks for your time this morning.
Great to be with you.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, January 26. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, minus 26. It feels like minus 35. Smith Falls, minus 24, feels like minus 29, and here's what's making news this hour. The mayor is set to unveil his State of the City address. Council opens its calendar year. In about a half an hour from now, Jim Watson will open up his last year on council with a picture of how the city is coping through the COVID pandemic. Also, motions to begin the session dealing with things like cycling safety and other points of concern. One councillor, Somerset's Catherine McKenney, has issued a statement concerning the trucker protest now on our doorstep, scheduled for Saturday on Parliament Hill. McKenney says while believing in protests, they also believe several members of this group are connected to militant racist, sexist, and homophobic groups. The councillor says those protests are not welcome here. If you damage infrastructure, threaten violence, or use statements of racism or homophobia, they say, with those who disagree with you, you are not welcome. While Canadians seem to be generally confident in the state of Canadian and personal economies, the higher interest rate could be on the way today. The Bank of Canada setting its rate in the next half hour or so. City News Time, 9:34. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix. Garry Kellar's here, Vice President of Strategy Corp. Good morning, Garry.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. A little cold, but you know
Yeah,
what?
a little on the cold side.
Life in the capital, right?
Yeah. Cam Holmstrom's here, Bluesky Strategy Group consultant there. Hi, Cam.
Good morning.
Now, Cam, you Kenora boy, you. I have to ask you, right now, it was much colder earlier this morning. It's minus 25, feels like minus 29. We've had this crazy cold snap in the capital.
Yeah.
Is it Kenora cold, Cam?
No.
This
is the
are we weather wimps, Cam? Are we being weather wimps or what?
I wouldn't say that. I always point out it's a more damp cold down here. It's a drier cold back home. It makes a difference. So I'm not going to criticize anybody.
Okay. All right. You're being kind. Thank you very much. Cam. Okay. All right. Okay. Wow, what a day already. What a week so far. It's only Wednesday. My goodness. Freedom Convoy, I believe, passing through your way, Cam, as a matter of fact, through Kenora. So on our way to our city. And it could be one of the largest protests in the history of the nation's capital if it lives up to the billing. So there is a news report this morning about the involvement of a small number of members of far-right groups. What are they up to? What do they want to do? Are they plotting some kind of Jan 6 thing? This is supposed to be about opposition to a government policy, namely vaccine mandates for cross-border truckers. But as this convoy approaches our city, what do you think this protest is about? Cam Holmstrom, why don't you take that one?
To be honest, this is starting to look more like the yellow vest protest we saw a couple of years ago than anything else. And that's not a good thing. There are some people within that are truckers that are doing their thing, but let's be honest, from the very beginning, we've seen disturbing signs of this. I saw signs from a rally early on in it where they were hanging the Prime Minister in effigy. I saw pictures from Winnipeg with anti-Semitic comments and slurs and all kinds of things. You're seeing some of the people on the far right who do enjoy whipping this stuff up, latching themselves onto this. And I'm very concerned about where all this money is coming from. I think there's some questions to be asked there. There was an interesting thread I read from a global security expert who kind of pointed out Canada's anti-terrorism laws. And you know what, if something were to happen similar to January 6th, how people who have been giving could find themselves liable in that sense because they've given to it. The fact that we're even able to have that conversation, I think, is scary, to be very blunt about it. Mm-hmm. But I'm of the approach of I'll believe it when I see it. We've heard some of this.
You'll believe what when you see it? I'm sorry.
The numbers showing.
Oh, the numbers.
I'll
the crowd, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like I think this is an animated group, no doubt about that. But I don't think that this is representative of the majority of people. Like even truckers themselves. Like remember, 90% of truckers are vaccinated.
Right.
And honestly, I wish we were spending more time thanking them for continuing to do the work that they're doing that is important to us, rather than a small subset of this group that are doing this, which frankly others have tried to leverage for their own benefit and gain.
Such as, just before we get to Garry, others have tried to leverage it for gain. What do you mean by that, Cam? What do you mean?
Well, some of these far right groups that you've mentioned, right? They're seeing a moment like we're seeing the Randy Hilliers of the world and the Maxime Berniers, even the person who's the main fundraiser or the main organizer of this GoFundMe fundraiser that's been frozen. Okay. She's an executive member of the Wexit or Maverick Party, whatever they're called now.
Maverick, yeah.
This is a fringe. This is the fringe, right?
Fringe.
So
okay.
It's yes, they have the ability to organize, but I think we need to keep in mind what it is that we're dealing with.
Okay, Garry. So it started out as a protest about vaccine mandates for cross-border truckers. Is that what it's still about, Garry? What do you think, Garry?
Yeah, it's a good question. Cam made some good points there. That there are some similarities to the United We Roll convoy that was in 2019, where it started out in support of the oil and gas industry, and it ended up being this complete catch-all of a grab bag of issues, some of which were pretty unsavory at the end of the day. And you had some people who had legitimate concerns and wanted to promote the oil and gas industry, ended up getting their message completely diluted by these wingnuts and cranks who latched on to the platform that this was providing. And I'm seeing a lot of the same things happening here. Yes, look, did the federal government have a complete schmozzle of a rollout of their plan on vaccine mandates for truckers? Absolutely. They said one thing one day, 18 hours said the complete opposite. And I think that certainly drove a lot of resentment about a government making arbitrary decisions or appearing to make arbitrary decisions. But this now is becoming a catch-all for a whole bunch of things. I did read something by one of the organizers of that United We Roll protest after the fact, and they admitted, they said, we started out with, wanting to defend our industry out west, and I'm not sure what we actually accomplished in the end of the day. And I think that's probably what's going to end up here. Like, you can come to Ottawa, you can peacefully protest. People do it all the time.
Sure.
I just heard the statement by Councillor McKinney, who said you're welcome in Ottawa to protest and be respectful, but you're not welcome to bring racist or violent views. You're not welcome to destroy infrastructure.
This is what I'm wondering, if we have, whatever it is, if it's 30,000 or 50,000, whatever. Let's say it's a big crowd. It's 20,000, 10,000, big crowd. There are going to be a few wingnuts in there, right?
Absolutely.
Cam, I mean, we talked about it, Cam, when the NDP policy convention was going on, and you said, look, you put 1,000 New Democrats in a room, you're going to get some whack jobs, right? You put 1,000 New Democrats in a room, there are going to be a few anti-Semites in there. There will be.
Yeah.
I guess I wonder is that what's going to come through? Because maybe there are legitimate concerns about the trucking industry, logistics, supply chains, food prices, inflation. All of those concerns are very legitimate concerns. But to Gary's point, I just wonder if it's going to be the whole thing gets hijacked by the fringe,
I think it's already been hijacked. I don't think it even made to the Ontario border before it got hijacked. And I think for those that are genuinely concerned about that, that's a sad thing. I think, honestly, part of this that's kind of undercuts those truckers who feel that way has been some of the facts of it. The CEO of Metro in their quarterly earnings call yesterday mentioned that, they're not having problems receiving things. The reason why some stuff isn't getting on some shelves is because they're short-staffed when it comes to stocking people because of COVID, right? It's not a matter of stuff getting to the stores or the warehouses. It's getting stuff from the warehouses onto the shelves, right? So, and the other side of this, too, is that, let's be real, it's not just us doing this. It's the Americans doing the same thing.
Right.
So, in theory, if you were able to get across the American border unvaccinated, right, like in theory, okay, you could say, okay, well, we'll let you back in, but you're not getting across the border unvaccinated, right? So to me, it's like there's a lot of things about this that are not adding up. I understand the frustration. I understand that. But it's like, what's the actual result of it? I think the problem you're running into now is that you're seeing some of these groups, some of it is turning with rather violent language, some putting out, some of the QAnon folks adding stuff about, basically asking the Senate to take over and dismiss the government of Canada and all this.
You're going to go to Mary Simon and blah, 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 blah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah, crazy
this
stuff.
This is what we're
right?
looking at, right? And it's like, I can't help but delude your message.
So, Garry, you're a politician, like you're Aaron O'Toole, for example. We're going to talk a lot about Aaron O'Toole. You're a politician, and there's a member of the press gallery, and they want you. They want to know from you if the truckers have your support. Do you support this convoy? Let's listen to what Aaron O'Toole had to say this week on that.
We've seen a crisis in the supply chain coming for several months, and we've proposed policies to try and help alleviate that. The most important of which is vaccines. And we encourage everyone to get vaccinated and to get boosted. And how can we use those tools alongside the other tools to make sure that we don't see shortages on grocery store shelves? Because here's the reality. When there's a shortage of products, the costs go up, and Canadians are already 60% worried about paying their grocery bill. So we can't have policies that make that even worse, and we can't raise taxes. So that's what we've been advocating for. Response.
He never comes close to answering the question, which is, do you support the truckers in the convoy? Are you going to go meet them? These kinds of things. You're a politician. What should you be saying at this moment in time if you're in the spotlight like Aaron O'Toole is, Garry?
Well, it's funny because I'm pretty sure I don't agree with Kathleen McKinney on just about anything, the city councillor. But I thought she actually had the tone absolutely right in her statement.
Okay.
Similar to what adding to what Aaron O'Toole is saying about these other issues, that we understand that reasonable protest and debate over issues is fine, it's welcome, but don't bring your violent rhetoric, don't bring ugly, hateful rhetoric with you. And at the end of the day, the best solution out of this is to get vaccinated. So get vaccinated. That would be what I was saying. I wouldn't meet with the organizers of the
You wouldn't meet with them? You wouldn't advise a politician to meet with them? No? Okay.
Because I think they're to Cam's point, I think their agenda has been totally hijacked by a small number of vocal and in some cases hateful people that they're going to lose the message completely.
Right. And the politician will be guilty by association, right?
Absolutely.
So,
100%.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened with Andrew Scheer last time around with the United We Roll. Exactly that. He tried to chase Max Bernier down the rabbit hole, and who was the one who took the pain for it? It was him, which actually surprises me why you see Andrew Scheer embracing this again. I saw a really good analysis of this from Andrew McDougall, the former Harbour staffer, pointing out that, you can point to the real point or the issue, right? But the second you go over the top with the language, like Mr. Scheer's tweet said, Justin Trudeau is the biggest danger to freedom in the country or something like that. Like, come on, that's crazy. That's over the top, right? Like, I'm no fan of Mr. Trudeau, but come on, he is far from being that. And the second you throw something like that out there, you've totally undercut any reasonable argument you might have had.
All right. We'll talk about Aaron O'Toole and conservative leadership politics when we come back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
The food cupboard started about 25 years ago. Again, it was a very small operation in the basement of a church. And we have been expanding to the point where we needed to have a new facility. So in discussion with the city of Ottawa, and Jan Harder, the local representative here, we came to this location, which is about 2,000 square feet, located in the Walter Baker Center. We've been here for about 2 years, and it is much better. It gives us a much broader opportunity to serve our clients better. It's a fairly affluent community in Barrhaven, so you wouldn't think that people would really need to have a food bank or a food cupboard. But people sometimes have a temporary loss of their job, maybe new immigrants or refugees to the community. Maybe there's been an injury in the family or something like a pandemic that causes people to run short of food during their monthly requirements. So we offer any clients who come and live in our catchment area the opportunity to pick up an order of food every 3 or 4 weeks. The need varies from time to time. We have expanded our offering to include quite a few perishables, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, vegetables, fruit. But people I think know that we need cans of beans and stuff as well too. One thing that we're consistently short of sometimes is personal hygiene products. You go to the grocery store, you buy your toothpaste and you buy your deodorant and shampoo there. People don't automatically think that to donate those kinds of things to a food cupboard. So we end up buying quite a few of those things from time to time. The pandemic has affected us like it has everybody. Initially, we had to stop the grocery store food donations so that we didn't have any risk of contamination and to have a significant number of volunteer work to be done in our facility. We have a storefront, so it's like a mini grocery store where you take a cart and you go around and pick out the things that you want. That doesn't work during the pandemic to maintain social distancing and so on. So what we have now is our clients can come in one at a time, they make an appointment, they stand behind a line, and they direct our volunteer to, I'd like Kellogg's cornflakes rather than Harvest Crunch, to pick the food that they would like off the shelves according to the allocation, depending on the size of their family. And then they take it out, load it into their vehicle or whatever, bring back the cart, we disinfect everything, and prepare for the next client. We are very blessed here in Barrhaven. We're a totally volunteer organization. So if you give a dollar to us, it goes to purchasing food or to provide some service to our clients.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Hey, we're back with Garry Keller from Strategy Corp, Cam Holmstrom from Bluesky. Talking politics. You guys miss the House of Commons? Don't you miss fiery debate going back and forth, questions and heckling and speakers standing up saying, order, order, things like that. I miss that. So every Wednesday in the UK, they have what's called Prime Minister's Questions. And the Prime Minister stands there and takes all the questions. And so it's 7 o'clock our time. So I watched it this morning because Boris is in a whole heap of trouble because he's a party animal, having lots of parties at the Prime Minister's residence, number 10 Downing, including a birthday party under lockdown. They're partying it up. So this is what it sounded like in the UK House of Commons today.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer, on the 8th of December, looks quizzical, he said it. On the 8th of December, the Prime Minister told this House, I have been repeatedly assured since these allegations emerged there was no party. So since he acknowledges the ministerial code applies to him, will he now resign?
No, Mr. Speaker. But, you know, since he asks about COVID restrictions, let me just remind the House, and indeed remind the country, that he has been relentlessly opportunistic throughout. Yeah. He has flip-flopped from one side to the other. He would have kept us in lockdown in the summer, Mr. Speaker.
All right, that's good. Just a little taste. I may play a little bit more of that. Boris calls his name, the Labour leader now, the leader of the opposition, his name is Keir Starmer. That's his name. And Boris Johnson calls him Captain Hindsight. Oh, yes, Captain Hindsight has all the answers. It's really quite entertaining. And, you know, they're so squeezed in there, Gary. Like, there's like 650 of them, you know? They're all squeezed in there, masked up. And but isn't it nice, Cam, to actually hear, like, members of Parliament in a House of Commons? It's refreshing. I miss it.
You know what? There's parts I miss. There are parts I don't miss.
Yeah.
You know, it's like anything else, right? It's like, you know, grass is greener on the other side. But you know what? I have to admit, I chuckled listening to that, especially for the guy whose people are defending him, saying that he was ambushed by a cake. Yes. There are so many clips coming out of that scandal that I want to use to train people. It's like, here's what not to do, people. Here's what not to do.
Okay, speaking of what not to do, Aaron O'Toole's days as Conservative leader appear to be numbered, is the headline in the Globe and Mail from Gary Mason's column. O'Toole deserves a second chance. Here's what he needs to do, is the Derek H. Burney National Post column. Conservative Riding Association joins call for vote on O'Toole leadership. Global News. O'Toole won't say if he backs truckers' anti-vax mandate convoy. What's eating Aaron O'Toole from iPolitics and Politico. Gary Keller, as leader of the opposition, is Aaron O'Toole a dead man walking?
Well, one thing Aaron O'Toole needs is, like our brethren in the UK, he needs the House of Commons to be actually sitting to help him prosecute and make the case for the Conservative Party. Look, there's no question that Aaron O'Toole is facing challenges to his leadership, both within his caucus and from outside. At the Electoral District Association level, and from some members of the membership who are unhappy. Now, a Conservative Party membership or EDAs that are unhappy with the leader or the position they're taking, give me a day that ends in Y, and I'll show you an EDA or a membership that is unhappy about something the leader has done or said, whether it was Stephen Harper, Ronna Ambrose, Andrew Scheer, or Aaron O'Toole. So, but look, people are still very unhappy with the electoral result, and I think the next session here of Parliament is really a make or break for Aaron O'Toole. I think he has to demonstrate, first of all, he has to demonstrate to his caucus and unite his caucus behind his leadership. Because when you don't have a united caucus, you can't win the country.
All right.
Okay. And I think the next period of time here, we're going to have a budget where the Liberals are going to lay out their priorities. The Liberals are going to put forward legislation on their priorities. And if Aaron O'Toole can bring forward a cogent attack on the Liberals that is attractive to voters and unites his caucus behind his leadership, he has a very fighting chance to lead the party into the next election. He also has to demonstrate, I think, a bit of humility. We've seen or we've heard that the postmortem on the election is coming this week at the caucus. There's a caucus meeting taking place this week, and I think he has to show some humility and some leadership in saying, this is the outcome of the review. Here's the measures I'm taking to address those issues, and we're going to move forward together. But that is the very first step. He needs to bring his caucus together and unite them under his leadership, because if you can't hold your caucus together, you can't win the country.
Aaron O'Toole, dead man walking, Cam?
I'm not willing to say he's dead yet, but there's blood in the water. The way I look at it, he's in the water, he's treading water, trying to keep his head up. But you know what? There are sharks circling, including a particular shark from Manotick who's ready to pull him under. Exactly. And I think that, you know, he's not acquitting himself well. Like, I agree with Jerry's point about the humility and trying to get the caucus around him. The problem is I don't think the caucus is very interested in getting around him. Putting the riding association stuff aside, like even just the people speaking out on the protest, the convoy, you can point to that. You can point to the fact that Pierre Poilievre is basically leading the messaging on everything that's happening right now when it comes to either the economy or COVID vaccinations or anything of that nature. You know, he's running that show right now. And the whole situation with Denise Batters, you know, the Saskatchewan caucus thing, you know, the caucus throws him out, but the Saskatchewan caucus says, no, you can stay, it's okay. You know, like he looks like he's been Denise cut out from under him a few times now. And I don't know how you can keep going like that. I just don't see how you can do it. And I think the one thing that could help him, like Jerry mentioned, the humility piece, there's a nice interview today that he did with John Ivison. And in that piece, the one part that really jumped out at me was that he was blaming the Greens for having lost seats, but not because the Greens collapsed because of the internal civil war of themselves. No, it was the Greens and the Liberals colluding and coming up with a plan to keep them out. Like, come on, like that's again, it's like that's really grasping at straws. Right, and if I'm a confident leader,
keep them at a Toronto Centre, maybe. I don't know. Enemy Paul never left Toronto Centre. So anyway.
Like,
but look, no. You mentioned, you know, the shark in the water. Well, I guess it'd be the river. Is Pierre Paul? I spoke to Pierre this morning here on the show. This is what I asked him. What do you say to people who wonder if you're plotting a leadership run of your own?
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit